The original 13 is one of the most unique first-person shooters I think ever made. It's one of those cult classic kind of games that not too many people know about, but those who do will no doubt talk highly of it. Developed by Ubisoft way back in 2003, it had a really cool story too. It was based off a Belgian comic book. You played as a guy who'd lost his memory and was trying to recover his identity whilst dealing with a government conspiracy involving some kind of secret society comprised of 20 hidden individuals. It was very X-Files in a lot of ways, and the main character was even voiced by David Duchovny, who of course we all know as playing Old Mate Mulder.
Well then, who am I?
It also had Adam West voicing one of the main characters and ended with what I think might be one of gaming's most unresolved cliffhangers, outside of maybe Half-Life Episode 2. Now, it wasn't a perfect first-person shooter, but it was competent enough, combined with some cool secret agent gadgets to use in those highly stylized, cel-shaded graphics, which honestly, I think still look good to this day.
Mr. Roland?
Topped off with an awesome soundtrack. But I'm not even going to waste my time and besmirch the name of the original by talking about it in comparison to the real main subject of this video. So if you want to know what the game is all about, well, go and watch my old review. I still think it's relevant and I still feel the same way about that game. This video is mostly going to be about the train wreck that is this remake and questioning why someone thought it would be worth taking a stab at in the first place. Well, that's what developers Play Magic thought they'd try. The keyword here being try. I can't imagine why you'd want to in the first place. It's such a niche style of shooter to remake. It'd be like a filmmaker trying to remake something like Pulp Fiction. This is though pretty much a beat for beat remake of the original game. It's carried across the entire campaign from start to finish. You've got the same voice acting, weapons, and that same ending. It's just managed to do it in the worst way possible. The biggest offender I think being that it just completely changes the way it looks. I'll be honest, I don't have that much of an issue with the redesigns of some of these characters, despite the fact that 13 looks exactly like Sam Fisher. But I will say that if you're going to remake a game that's known for its cel-shaded visuals, well, maybe removing the cel-shaded visuals ain't the best way to go about it. The developers are apparently pushing out some kind of day one patch, but unless that day one patch can somehow overhaul the entire visual style they've chosen to go with, look, I don't think it's really going to fix all that much. At this point, it's kind of like trying to seal up a leaking swimming pool with sticky tape. On top of that, all of those funky cinematics, which were those really cool looking comic book style pages between missions, are now replaced by these boring, generic ones with 3D models instead, and they just kind of suck. I mean, look, compare these two cinematics back to back, right? One of my favorites from the original game, and then try to tell me that the remake's version isn't worse off.
Get behind the wheel, drive.
Okay, just don't hurt me, please. Allah!
Get behind the wheel, drive.
Okay, just don't hurt me, please.
Alert!
You won't get anywhere in this ambulance. We're in the middle of the desert. There's nothing for miles. This is insane. They're gonna kill you like a dog.
Watch out!
You won't get anywhere in this ambulance. We're in the middle of the desert. There's nothing for miles. This is insane. They're gonna kill you like a dog.
Watch out!
Well, that was fucking dreadful.
And then, despite them recreating all of the cinematics throughout the rest of the game, the intro is just the one from the original game. That's some FBI agents watching on a projector in some kind of briefing room or something. After that, during the prologue sequence on the beach with the lifeguard, who now looks like a Fortnite character for some reason, there's no kind of background ambience either, it's just dead silence. In the ensuing cinematic when the lifeguard shot and killed, sorry spoilers, it's also way less impressive. I mean, just compare these two sequences back to back. It's almost like she's lining up to be shot as well in the second one, and it also lacks that bit where the gunman starts shooting out these other windows, which showed off the original game's comic book style effects. I mean, about the only thing they got right here was that high-cut one-piece swimsuit she's got on. I mean, damn. Anyway, this whole first level is a perfect example of how soulless this remake is going to be. And honestly, I could just stop the video right here, I think, having already proven my point, but I'm really only just getting started. Despite all of these new environments being recreated with a modern graphics engine, in a lot of ways, they somehow look worse off than the originals. It's often just something as simple as the finer details missing, like that level when you're rescuing General Carrington, for instance, it now isn't snowing. I don't know, maybe snow was too system intensive to add in, so they just didn't bother. This also goes the same for a lot of the other effects in the game too, like the difference in using a prop to knock someone out. The AI in this thing is laughable at the best of times. In fact, I wouldn't even call it AI, it's just A. You'll frequently see enemies just standing there looking at the wall or the ground, completely oblivious to your presence, even when you're standing right next to them. Sometimes you'll kill someone and then the person standing near them won't even react. It actually makes some of the stealth levels way easier, but not in a good way. Combat isn't much better either, and the inclusion of iron sights turns most weapons into laser pointers, so you can just dome a bunch of the enemies from range before they can even see you. On the subject of iron sights, yeah, you better get used to that mouse sensitivity because you can't change the ADS controls in the menu either. Weapons sound, but more importantly, they feel weak when shooting them. Like they lack any kind of impact, and the way they've downplayed a lot of those onomatopoeic elements with the combat just makes it seem even more boring. Then on the other side of things, you've got the shotgun, which is so overly powerful that it almost seems to be sending these enemies to the goddamn Shadow Realm. Again, look, the original game didn't exactly have stellar shooting, but it was just that inclusion of those comic book style mechanics that, on some level, at least made it feel unique. One of the cool features it had was that when an explosion went off near the player, the whole screen would shake, revealing this comic book panel outline. So yeah, what a smart idea to totally remove that from this remake. Nice one. Those really cool scripted death sequences you got in the original game also seem like they've been toned down a fair bit. The bit when you're sniping dudes on the rooftop is a perfect example. I mean, look at this bullshit.
Good job.
Yeah, what a perfect analogy for this game in general. This guy just falls over and dies. I know how he feels.
Good job.
I don't know if the death animations are intentional either, but they look absolutely terrible. Like you shoot someone, the weapon just kind of disappears from their hands, and then they slowly keel over to the ground. It's almost like there's a delay before the animation realizes that the NPC's dead. And the physics are just horrible as well. I've lost count the amount of times an enemy corpse clips through the wall or the floor when they're killed. It just really seems like no effort's been put into any of this.
Of Winslow Bank, please come in.
Central, this is Car 5. A unit is already at the scene.
Copy that, Car 5. Standing by.
This remake also adds in a weapon limit, and that's something that wasn't even a mechanic in the original. So now you can't hold both the pistol and the revolver, it's gotta be one or the other. And the same thing for taking either the sniper rifle or the RPG, or the crossbow or the LMG. And all I can say here is, why?
Don't let him get away, these
They've added in a weapon wheel and then other modern shooting mechanics like sprinting and, like I said before, aiming down sights. But then they didn't add in the convenience of something like a dedicated grenade throw button, you know, which would have actually been really handy. Look, if only it ended there, Sonny Jim, but the problems carry across to the audio as well. For starters, the sound mixing is just all over the place. Sometimes you can barely hear what someone's saying when they're standing right in front of you, then other times no one's even going to be near you, but you'll hear their voice as if they're shouting right into your ears.
The FBI's got undercover officers in Brooklyn. That's where the guy was transferred. Hurry, 110 Sterling Street.
Ambient sound effects are often missing entirely, replaced with nothing but dead air. I mean, compare the ambience on the two versions of this prison level as an example.
Well, has he spoken?
Patience, he only just came to.
Well, has he spoken?
Patience, he only just came to.
Same thing with the many flashbacks throughout the game, like there's often no sound at all, removing the mysterious element to uncovering your character's past. Not to mention, it lacks that filter that makes them look much more dreamlike, and you know, like an actual flashback, and not just like it's had a lazy black and white effect added to it. Even with the music turned up to the max, you can often barely hear it, which is also a bit of a shame, because the soundtrack is one of the game's biggest strengths. I mean, it's awesome. And it's about the one saving grace to this remake is that they've at least left it in. That is, if the music or the sound even works. By the end of the campaign, it sounded like my speakers were having a goddamn seizure. Performance is also pretty bad. The frame rate is inconsistent and rarely steady. There seems to be some kind of mouse acceleration, and aside from that, I've also had input delay as well, which sure ain't helping things feel smoother either. Now look, I might put up with a lot of crap in games, but I can't stand by idly and let mouse acceleration slide. I can't. I won't. The person who invented mouse acceleration, I think, is really one of the gaming industry's greatest villains, along with the same guy who first thought up escort quests. Every time one of those comic book panels pops up to show you an important detail, like nearby enemies or an item of interest, the frame rate always seems to take a nosedive, which is probably just because it's another feature they haven't optimized.
Good job.
And yeah, for people wondering, no, you can't adjust the FOV either. The original 13 also had a really solid multiplayer mode as well, but all they've included on the PC version is local multiplayer, with 3 maps to choose from. Yeah, 3. And they removed the bot support as well.
Good job.
Then there's just the outright bugs, like missions not loading properly and letting you progress to the next area. At one point during a boss fight against a chopper, the chopper got stuck in a warehouse and couldn't even move. In another level, the NPCs hadn't despawned after a scripted sequence, and they were all just standing around in this room together. And then of course, this happened to this guy's face. Ladders in this thing honestly have a mind of their own. Half the time they don't even work and you fall off one of them to your death.
Number 1 safety is not an issue, General. I'm the only one who knows his identity.
And how about this bug right here, which I don't even know how to describe. It's like something out of a David Cronenberg film. Honestly, I could go on and on about this thing, but at this point I feel like I'm beating up someone who's already lost consciousness. Do you know what I mean? It's like, do I really need to continue? Yeah, nah, I will. It's almost like this whole game's been made by an alien that's visiting Earth. One who maybe played the original game a bunch of times and was then told to recreate it from memory alone. It just lacks everything that made the original game so fun. And in a lot of cases, the things it tries to replicate, it does worse off. About the only objective thing I think they've improved in this remake is that they've added in more checkpoints during some of the levels. The original game had some levels where you'd get one, if any, checkpoint at all, and this could result in a fair bunch of trial and error. Especially during some of the stealth missions where if you got detected, it could be an entire mission restart. The submarine level is one of the most infamous ones in the whole game, and I think honestly, it probably took me a couple of dozen attempts the first time I ever played it all those years back. Now this remake does away with that entirely, putting checkpoints at fair places throughout these levels. Some people might even think this is a bad thing, but I think it's a mercy considering the sooner you can finish this remake and never have to touch it again, the better. Amazingly, I have seen a bunch of people trying to defend this thing, and look, PlayMagic might be able to fix this mess. It is possible.
Mr. President, can you hear me? Okay, he's breathing.
I mean, they'd only need to change the visuals back to the old style. Fix the sound design, fix the enemy AI, fix the animations, the physics, the performance, add in an FOV slider, more multiplayer maps, bot support, fix all the bugs, fix all the glitches. I mean, it's not like there's that much stuff they'd have to do. The long and short of it though is that 13 is a remake that just never needed to happen. I really don't know anyone who was actually pining for one, and I doubt the younger demographic of gamers would even be interested in something like this, that's unironically more antiquated than the game it's based off. A remaster on the other hand, I'd have been all for it, and I'd have thrown my money at these guys so quickly they wouldn't even know what to do with it. And off the back of that, the one positive thing I can see coming out of this is that people will now become aware of the original game. I mean, I think it's even on Steam for like $5, which is an absolute bargain. This remake though just has so little going for it, apart from that lifeguard swimsuit at the start of the game and this one poster in that submarine level. Other than that though, this is a complete train wreck. And the only thing worse than playing it was having it open up those old wounds and remind me that the original is something we're never going to get a sequel to.
Fuck it! Give me the RPG! I'll put an end to this! Suck on that!
Good job.